My wife was an ordinary, gorgeous woman who, like me, wanted to build a solid financial basis before starting a family so that the children may live comfortably and without need. I've been toying with this notion with my wife for a few years. But I couldn't believe she could have an affair and expect nothing to happen to her as a result. I was furious when I discovered the full truth. My name is Jason Thompson, and I am married to Amber. She's a looker, quite attractive. And she always dresses well, albeit modestly. I, on the other hand, am just an average-looking man. Amber usually arranges her hair and applies cosmetics even on her days off. She never comes without making an effort to look her best. She is really organized in my field. I review contracts and proposals while Amber teaches English in the middle school. Her mode of transportation is a white Hyundai Elantra that appears to be the unofficial vehicle of the public education system. There is a minor ding in the fender from when she backed into my car, which also has a small indentation. We first met while taking the same college class during our junior year. We both had aspirations. My goals were to have a solid job and start a family. But hers were to achieve success on her own. We got married this summer after we graduated. And everything was good. We seemed to have everything going for us. 8 years into our marriage, I went home from work one evening and was met by Amber in a robe. "Do you want to join me in the bedroom?" she questioned as she opened her robe. How could I resist this? She took my hand and led me to our bed, and the next hour was a blur for me. It was unforgettable. Amber said that our heartbeats had returned to normal. "Wait here." I made dinner and went to the kitchen. She returned with pizza and a pack of beer. We took a couple bites and drank beer. Then she asked Jason, "Do you think we could start a family?" I smiled. We had previously explored the prospect of establishing a family, but we thought that the timing was not appropriate. "What were you thinking about in November then?" "I could give birth during the school holidays." "Well, I think it's an excellent plan. Would you like to celebrate a bit more?" She took my hint. We then proceeded to the second lap, followed by the third and final lap after a little pause. I had a really peaceful night's sleep. "Hello, just a heads up. Tonight, my book group will meet at 6 p.m. So dinner is in the microwave. Catch you later," Amber said as she left for school about 9:30 a.m. I felt a spring in my step at work. The prospect of establishing a family made me excited. And since Amber's family lived close, I called them during my lunch break and invited them over. "John, are you and Maggie available to come over tonight? We've got some great news to share. Amber has a book club meeting and should return at 9:30 p.m. Let me check with Maggie quickly." John replied after a brief pause. "Sure thing. We will see you later tonight about 3 o'clock. I got an email that puzzled me. Meet at the Garden Inn before 6 p.m. Maintain timeliness." The email sender remained unknown to me. Trying to focus on work was pointless because my curiosity overpowered me. I was unable to concentrate. As I drove through rush hour traffic and arrived at the Garden Inn, I parked in an empty lot and waited. It was shortly before 6 p.m. A couple more automobiles arrived, but none were recognized to me. Imagine my surprise when Amber's automobile came up across from mine. She emerged dressed in a gorgeous blue costume that I had never seen before. It was unusual of her to choose this venue for a meeting. I got out of my car, locked it, and walked a few steps before freezing in disbelief. The man in the car beside her got out, and she joined arms with him, kissing him on the cheek. My brain swirled, my legs trembled, and my stomach turned. Sweating terribly, I leaned against my car and vomited. Gathering my belongings, I grabbed a floppy golf hat, a jacket and sunglasses. She had never seen me on the golf course, so perhaps she wouldn't know me. I dashed into the lobby, where I found Amber in the lounge area while the man she was with checked in at the counter. I approached the brochure display, which advertised hot air balloon flights, museums, and guided tours. Pretending to browse, I discreetly took out my phone and engaged the video function, concealing it with a pamphlet. Looking back to Amber, I felt a twinge of sadness as I noticed her sitting with a six-pack in a pizza box. After the jerk completed checking in, they went to the elevators. I continued recording. As soon as they entered the elevator, I hurriedly approached the stairs. With only 4 floors, I thought I had a fair chance of following them. I paused briefly on the 2nd floor, realizing they must have already left if they were going to the 3rd story. Just in time to see them walk away from me. They came to a stop a few rooms from the end. And the jerk swiped his key card. What a gentleman, holding the door for Amber as it closed behind them. I turned off my video and stood there contemplating my next step. I eventually decided to anticipate a conflict and return to the parking lot. A malicious idea occurred to me. I got out my phone and called Dusty. Dusty, we are entitled to a free tow if it is within 50 miles. Hello. My wife's car is in starting. Could you tell it to our house? How soon? 20, 30 minutes. Excellent. I will be waiting. I drove around the lot, got into my car and parked near Amber's car where I waited for the tow truck. I saw a duffel bag on the passenger seat. Curiosity piqued. I unzipped it and discovered a change of clothes and a tampon. When she came home, she would undoubtedly appear conservative. I had no inkling. Then I came across a ring box, opened it, and saw her wedding ring. I'm not sure what my blood pressure was, but it was probably dangerously high. I asked my friend Charlie, who was good with repairs, for a large favor. Hey, Charlie, this is Jason. Could you replace my door locks tonight? Yeah, dealing with a few concerns. Perfect. I'll arrive about 7. See you shortly. Perhaps the jackass left his car open. Okay, let's find out. A car seat in the back showed that he was carrying a wife and a young child in the glove compartment. I found a registration card. Chad Bennett. I pocketed it and departed his car. AA came. After exchanging niceties, they started pulling Amber's automobile, loading. It did not take long. The tow truck pulled away and I headed home. We arrived simultaneously. It took a few minutes to park Amber's car after tipping the man. He drove away. Once the tow vehicle had left, I opened her garage door, drove her car inside and parked it. Then I brought the duffel bag inside and tossed it on the sofa. I had about 2 hours until she returned from the reading club. I grabbed the box of leaves bags and large trash sacks and went to her wardrobe. After a few trash bags, her closet was empty. Then I went to her dresser and emptied her underwear and jewelry into additional sacks. The bathroom was next, with all of the makeup, fragrances and soaps put into yet another sack. I brought the sacks down to the garage one by one and stacked them in Amber's Elantra's back seat, which didn't have much space. Charlie arrived and started changing the locks. He also recommended resetting the garage door openers, so now only my opener would function. After paying Charlie, I got myself a glass of water and drank a quick shot of scotch. It was around 9 p.m. and things were about to become messy, with just a few minutes to spare. I got out our joint credit cards, called in and reported the theft. I got the registration slip and looked up the location. Brad and Christy were named as the owners. I'll need to alert Christy about what I discovered. My phone rang just after 9. It was Amber. Hello, Jason. My automobile was stolen. Her voice was tremulous and agitated. Actually, Amber, I had it towed to our house. Why don't you have Chad give you a ride? No. God. I ended the call. My heart pounded. My palms were sweating. The doorbell rang. Who may be present at this hour? No, it was John and Maggie. I neglected to invite them earlier. Today. This was about to become fascinating. John, Maggie, please come inside. Can I offer you a drink? Amber just called and I expected to arrive soon. They settled into the couch. I gave John a beer. I was worried and it was clear that it wasn't Chad who arrived, but rather a cab that had come up and dropped Amber off. She hurried up the walkway and tried to use her key. When that failed, she pressed the doorbell. I granted her entry. Her mascara was smudged. She'd been sobbing before. Amber might explain. Jason interrupted her. I'm very sorry, Mom. Dad, what are you doing here? From her? Maggie expressed concern weirdly. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Are you okay? I interjected. Amber, I called your parents at noon today and told them we had a big announcement for them. I continued to explain. Amber and I were spending time together as a married couple last night and she mentioned that we should continue, I said. Then Amber went downstairs, got some pizza and beer. And we ate dinner in bed. After that, she asked Jason. Do you think we could start a family? Maybe in a few months so I can give birth in between school years. Maggie exclaimed, Amber. That is wonderful. I interrupted her loudly. Wait, that is not all. Approximately 6 p.m. Amber was intimately engaged with several men, not just myself. Amber exhaled. Jason, we need to talk about this in private. Please, let's not do this now. I ignored her plea and said, so she is either doing this for money or she is having affairs on the side and making her loving husband look like a cuckold. And I refuse to remain married to her whatever it is. Amber dropped to her knees crying. I interjected. John, I have a video here. Let us watch it together. Does that attire look familiar? Okay, he is checking in. She's waiting. Look, she's got pizza and beer for him too. They're walking towards the elevator. There is nothing on the second story. There they are on the third floor. He is holding her door. Are I rushing to conclusions, John? So Amber, you are a woman of easy virtue, John intervened. Daddy, no, John insisted. So you have lovers? Amber remained mute. Heavily. Where is your wedding ring, Amber? I inquired. She said that it is at the jeweler's for cleaning. Really? Swear at your mother's grave. Sorry, Maggie. Amber understood she'd been caught. Maggie, could you please open the duffel bag and discover the ring box? You see, that is the change of clothes she brings with her to trick me. Maggie got the ring box, opened it and rose to walk across the room to Amber, who offered her hand. Maggie gave a hard slap to her cheek. How could you? Maggie exclaimed. Amber was sobbing uncontrollably. John asked Jason. What are the next steps? I've packed all of her possessions and loaded them into her car. The locks have been changed and credit cards have been cancelled. She's gone. Jason declared. Amber complained. No, I want to stay with you. Jason, I love you. I still want your baby. That will never happen. Please leave now. I snapped back. I am not leaving. She insisted. John rose from his seat, approached Amber, took her pocketbook and then gripped her ear forcefully. Refusing to let go, bringing her to her feet as she screamed in pain. He led her to the garage and then to her car. Get in and out. You are not welcome here either. John placed an order while dazed. Amber slumped into her driving seat and rested her head on the steering wheel. John was unfazed, pounding on the window. Go, leave now. She started the engine and reversed out. John, Maggie and I watched from the porch as she left. We slowly embraced each other, agreeing to stay in touch. They apologized for their daughter, but I assured them that it was unnecessary because it was all Amber was doing. I secured the house, poured myself a glass of scotch and crashed on the couch. As I fell asleep, tears streamed down my face. The following day was hazy. Amber took cash from the ATM and I depleted our account by paying off our credit card bills electronically. I contacted HR. I changed the destination of my income and contacted acquaintances to get a lawyer to create divorce documents. Driving to Christie's house, I noted Chad's absence and knocked on her door. I introduced myself as Jason and explained my relationship with our spouses. I showed Christie a fairly damning film which she watched closely. When was this recorded? She inquired. Last night around 6 p.m., I confronted my wife when she arrived at 930 and she did not deny anything. I believe this has been going on for some time, but I don't have any specific evidence. What is your plan? Christie asked. I asked her to leave last night and have just left my lawyer's office. Who is preparing the divorce papers? I disclosed. Can you provide your lawyer's contact information? She requested. Of course. Let me get a pen and paper, I offered. Amber tried to contact several times, but I ignored her calls, letting them to go to voicemail. She sent a text. Jason, I need entrance to the house to retrieve my computer and school records. Could we please talk? I hated facing her and smirked as my palms sweated. I said, let's aim for 9:30 p.m. I have a book club meeting. I spent the evening at a sports bar attempting to avoid becoming too intoxicated. A glass of scotch on the rocks provided me the confidence to face this encounter. When I arrived home about 9:20 p.m., I parked and closed the garage door. Amber was silently waiting in her car. I opened the front door. Amber dressed casually in sweatpants and minimal makeup had her hair pulled back into a ponytail. Are you ready to speak? She inquired. I just shook my head. I had no intention of giving her the chance to deliver her prepared speech. She went into the bedroom, then into the spare room we used as an office and gathered some stuff. It took her several trips to get everything she needed. Every time she entered the house, she inquired, "Are you ready to talk yet?" Each time I simply shook my head. Amber could no longer hold herself. Jason, I love you. You're the only person I've ever loved. I have made a huge mistake. I think we can work it out. Will you give me a chance? I want you. I need you. Please. Say something. I said, you will never understand the impact this has had on me. My lawyer is preparing the divorce paperwork and you'll be served either tomorrow or this weekend. Tears ran down her face. And her lips trembled. Jason, I do not want a divorce. Please, cannot we work this out? You can ask me anything. I promise to be truthful from now on and never cause you to doubt my love. Amber. I just have one question and only I can answer it. How could I have utterly misunderstood you? You should go, I said, my eyes watering over with tears flowing down her cheeks. Amber left. But not without pleading. Please ponder about this. I want only you. One drink of scotch would not suffice. A few days later, while looking through my emails, I came upon the one that revealed the affair. I responded, thank you. I owe you more than you could possibly fathom. You are a guardian angel. I spent the evening considering the possibilities. Who notified me and for what reason? Eventually, I realized that it must have been someone from Amber's workplace. I found a florist and arranged for a beautiful arrangement of roses to be sent to Amber's school. Addressed the teacher's lounge with a note from my guardian angel. Thank you. The following evening, I received an email from my mysterious donor. The flowers are gorgeous. Thank you. And you are welcome, whomever you are. Thank you. I am delighted to meet you. A few days later, I decided to send an invitation by email as a tiny gesture of appreciation. I'd like to take you in your companion out to supper. The more I stayed in the house, the more convinced I was that I should sell it. There were too many sad memories. Life was a struggle with emotions that ranged from rage to self-pity. But each day seemed a bit lighter. I began to regain productivity at work. But I observed that others treated me as if I were contagious. I believe I was a little short-tempered with others. A week after sending my email to my anonymous donor, I received a quick response. Never married. Given my recent failure to comprehend women's signals, I decided to sleep on the best way to respond. In the morning, I arranged for more flowers to be delivered to the teacher's lounge, along with a letter stating that dinner may be served any day, any time, any place, and to anyone. It seemed like the therapeutic distraction I needed. I eagerly awaited the replies. My colleagues at work gradually resumed conversations with me. One day, after lunch, someone mustered the confidence to ask, "Is it too soon to discuss it?" "Not really," I said to the few people who listened. "She was having an affair, and I've started divorce proceedings. I need to return to work. I will be okay. Your support means a lot to me," I added as I exited the lunchroom. My weight loss journey came to a conclusion on Friday afternoon, when I received an email from my angel saying, "The flowers are beautiful. The Oscars air at 6 p.m. On Saturday, dress casually, pink rose." I'd never heard of the Oscars before, but a short internet search revealed they were held in a city around 40 miles away. Clearly, she did not want to be seen with me. A smile appeared on my lips. I chose to wear my floppy golf hat, sunglasses, and windbreaker. I truly needed this. I was so excited that I spent Saturday afternoon shopping near the Oscars. I bought a dozen pink roses. A silver Allentra approached, and a woman with pink roses in her hair emerged and entered. I spotted her at the restaurant and asked, "Are these for you?" "Yes, they are wonderful. Please join me. My name is Jason." "My name is Zoe. It's nice to finally meet you. You may remove your disguise if we are discovered here." It was meant to be. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Zoe. Just so you know, this is our only meeting until your divorce is finalized. I do not date married males. My universe has a certain order, and that is how it will remain. I'm fine with that too. It's way too early for me to figure out what's going on in my thoughts and heart. So let's call this a fact-finding gathering. That way, you aren't on a date. There's no harm there." We ordered beverages first, followed by dinner, dessert, then coffee. Zoe appeared to be in her mid-20s, same to myself, and had an average appearance. We had a friendly talk about many issues. After dinner, while we sipped our coffee, I mustered the bravery to ask, "How did you know and why did you tell me?" Zoe took a sip, set her cup down, and placed her hand on mine. One day, while grading papers, I noticed Amber emerged from the teacher's restroom with a duffel bag and dressed to impress, which was unusual for her at school. Knowing she frequently mentioned you, I figured you two were arranging a special evening. However, I remembered her accepting a call from you at lunch and mentioning joining the book club again, which did not fit with the picture, as I mentioned before. My universe runs in a specific way, and this situation simply did not fit. I dropped behind, but was trapped in traffic behind her, so I followed her to the garden entrance. A man approached her in the parking lot at 6 p.m. The date I sent you an email. I saw her place the identical duffel bag in her desk. Your name and email address were easy to obtain because they are on the teacher's emergency contact list. I avoided using my school email account due of Amber's organizing. I figured she'd meet at the same time, which turned out to be correct. Because I have to work with these people, I must keep my identity disguised, at least for now. I never meant to bring you harm. I indicated with my hand, sending her a silent kiss. The message stung. But I understand it is not the messenger's fault. Thank you. I will leave first. Thank you for the roses. I never got the opportunity to take the others home, she remarked as I paid the payment. Zoe joined in. You took me off guard. My heart raced when the first flowers arrived. And it got even faster with the second group. You are quite smooth, and just so you know there were at least half a dozen women, including some married ones, who would have accepted your dinner invitation. Miss Zoe, I'd like to propose that we meet for dinner again in a few months. I'd enjoy that. Good night, she said as she left the restaurant. She was quite easy to chat with. On Monday, I delivered pink roses to the teacher's lounge, along with a letter stating that it couldn't have been better. That night, I received an email stating, "You don't play fairly." Things progressively stabilized, with fewer and fewer mood swings. A few weeks later, I sent pink roses to the teacher's lounge again. This time, with the message, "Please remember me." Later that evening, I received the one-word email "Unforgettable." That weekend, while examining contracts in my apartment, I received a call from a private number. Hello, Jason. I'm Zoe. Am I interrupting anything? Well, I'm channel surfing and can't seem to find anything to watch, so I guess I'll stop and chat with you. She giggled. It's good to hear your voice. How are you holding up? I am doing okay. What pulls you home on Saturday nights? I assumed you'd have a line of people waiting to date you. Keep thinking about that. How are things going with Amber? I haven't communicated with her since the day she moved out. She calls, but I let it go to voicemail. She sends a few text messages per day. I am eager for the divorce to be finalized. The lawyers have reached an agreement. I suppose I am still married. Thus I am startled to receive this call. I mentioned I didn't date married men. This is only a welfare check. There's no danger in talking to a married man who is going through a divorce. We talked for another 20 minutes before saying our goodbyes for the night. I said that I had a difficult week ahead of me and would appreciate your check-in next week. I will think about it. Zoe answered. Good night. Before hanging up. She's a really easy person to chat to. The following week she called back. During future chats, I came to know her better. She revealed that during her second year of college, she caught her boyfriend, Jeff, cheating on her with a roommate. They'd been together since high school. She described how he disregarded it with, "Hello, I'm a guy. We are unaffected by it." She broke up with him right away and hasn't pursued a serious relationship since. It found out that we had a lot in common. I inquired of her. "It appears that this happened half a dozen years ago and your security barriers are still pretty tall. Is this what will happen to me as well?" After a little silence, she said, "I don't think so. It appears that you still have a lot of love to give. Someone will encourage you to give it another chance." I had attended several occasions but was worried about the attention from people who would soon be single. I just wasn't interested yet. Zoe indicated that she was dating, but most men would stop calling when she wasn't having sex with them. After several dates, Amber attempted to contact me via text one last time before my divorce was official. "Jason, please halt the divorce. I have changed. I understand what really matters and it is you. Please, I ask you, stop this." I couldn't find the words to respond. "If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all." My divorce from Amber was officially finalized the next day. That evening, Zoe sent me an email saying, "Now that you're single again, call me." I called the number she gave me and a man answered. My heart sank. "Hi. Is Zoe available?" I ask. "Zoe, it's your phone," the man shouted. "Hello," Zoe said. "Hi. This is Jason. Is this a bad time? I can call back later." "No." "Why do you ask?" "Well," a guy answered. Zoe giggled. "Calm down. I live at home. That's my dad." I sighed. Wow. My heart dropped when he answered that. "Sweet," Zoe replied. "Well, don't you have a mean streak?" "No. It means you care about me more than you've let on." "I like that. You got me there. Caught red-handed." "It's pretty clear. I still have some issues to work on." "Not a problem. I'm up for the challenge." We arranged a dinner for the following evening, which quickly became a twice-weekly occurrence over the course of several more months. We went on numerous dates each week. During one of our outings, Zoe inquired, "Is Amber still attempting to reach out to you?" I retrieved my phone, located the message thread with Amber and passed it to Zoe. She remained silent for several minutes, scrolling through over 100 text messages. Amber used these messages as a sort of diary, updating me on various aspects of her life. Updates on John and Maggie progress with her counseling and updates on her colleagues. Zoe's eyes welled with tears as she remarked, "Jason, I can feel her anguish. She truly loves you. If you think about it long enough, it makes sense." I responded to her, "I'm still the Jason she fell in love with and married. But the Amber I loved and married is gone. This Amber can never take her place. I've moved on." Zoe pressed further. "Why didn't you ever respond to any of these messages?" I didn't want to give her any false hope of us reconciling. I admitted I had never imagined finding someone so soon after my divorce. But now I knew that I wanted Zoe to be my wife. Still grappling with expressing my feelings, I once again resorted to gestures. I sent a dozen pink roses to the teachers, along with a tag that read, "I think I love you." The following day filled me with apprehension. Had I spoken too soon? What if her response wasn't what I hoped for? Shortly after lunch, my phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "I know I love you. About a week later, I finally made a decision and sent another dozen pink roses to the teachers' lounge. As the teachers began to gather for lunch in the lounge, the school secretary entered holding the bouquet of flowers. "Ladies, we have another bouquet for someone," she announced. Katie, one of the single teachers, eagerly rose from her seat and opened the accompanying envelope. Listen to this. "Will you marry me?" she exclaimed. The room erupted into a collective gasp. Katie went on. "If whoever these are meant for won't marry him, I will. So give me his name and number." Zoe couldn't contain her excitement and stood up to claim the roses from Katie. "These are for me." "Thank you," Zoe declared. The murmur of voices grew louder with disbelief. "The Ice Princess? No way. Who is he?" "Zoe. Really? That's incredible," Katie interjected. "Wait. All this time they've been for you. Who's the lucky guy?" "Jason Thompson," Zoe replied. "Amber's Jason. Not anymore. Now he's Zoe's Jason." "Wow. Amber is going to freak out," Katie predicted. While I was having lunch at my desk, my secretary knocked on the door and inquired, "Are you busy?" "No. What's up?" Zoe burst into the room holding roses and exclaimed, "Yes, yes, yes. Look before." Rushing into my arms. Amber left school early that day due to illness and remained absent for several days later. She applied for a transfer to another school and our text exchanges ceased. Throughout our acquaintance, Zoe and I cuddled and shared kisses. I was reluctant to disrupt the harmony one Sunday while we were embracing and watching a movie. Zoe suddenly asked, "Do you miss being close?" Zoe asked. "Of course. But if I get too hung up on it, it will cause conflicting emotions," I replied. "I'm nervous, Jason. I'm afraid I might disappoint you in bed," Zoe admitted. "I'm not worried at all. I will do my best to please you and I know that you will do the same for me," I assured her and began to indulge in passion. We had a wonderful night and after that we started seeing each other more and more often. Experiencing intimacy with her was incredible. Though she seemed inexperienced in bed, it worked to my advantage. Thanks to her, I realized I had a bright future ahead. We had a small wedding ceremony since Zoe's parents couldn't afford much after the wedding. While going through a box of wedding cards, we discovered a postcard from Amber at read, "I will always love you." Zoe commented, "I should send her roses for giving you to me." I shook my head. I tried never to intentionally hurt anyone. After pondering for a moment, Zoe approached, embraced me tightly and kissed me saying, "You're right. I'm married a good man. I probably have a daughter named Z and a son named J." Whatever Zoe does, she always extends the invitation. "You're always welcome to join me." She participates in the book club, but we host it at our house, eliminating the need for trips. Even after a few years, I'm still occupied with my work. Coincidentally, we bumped into Amber at the grocery store. Z walked alongside me, clutching my finger while Zoe held J. "Amber, you're looking well. How have you been?" I inquired. "Jason. Zoe, it's nice to see you both." "He really takes after you, Jason," remarked Amber. Zoe joined in. "I heard you landed a job as deputy director. Congratulations." "Thank you. It keeps me busy. The previous person wasn't very organized." "Well, I should get going." Amber bid farewell, holding back tears. I didn't notice any rings on her fingers. So she must still be single. It occurred to me that we both got what we wanted. 12 years ago. I had a son and a daughter, and she found success through her own efforts. It's ironic how things turned out. Here's the next story. Frank Walker watched fellow patrons savoring their time, some pausing for walks or to place calls. Beverages and coffee were served and the festivity persisted. But Frank was preoccupied with considering an unexpected message left by an unknown server. This message warned him of a potential threat posed by Mark Laval, who, according to the note, intended to seduce his spouse. The alarm caught Frank off guard, and when he examined the note again, he noticed his spouse dancing with Laval once more. This troubled him, especially when they disappeared for the second time. Frank decided to step in. However, before he could rise, the music stopped and he saw them leave the dancing floor. He returned to his seat, reassured, expecting Laval to accompany his wife back. Instead, they approached Mark's table where Frank observed them conversing with him and his acquaintances. Shortly after Laval had left, his wife went to the restroom after saying goodbye to Frank and proclaiming her love for him. Frank watched his wife walk past the dining area toward the corridor that leads to the restrooms. He suspected something was wrong with her explanation about going to the restroom. The peculiarity was her stop and confession of love, which suggested she was leaving for reasons other than to use the restroom. Frank up and followed her, but he had only walked a few steps when Laval and his associates rose from their table as the message had warned and blocked his path. Frank Walker made his living by addressing difficulties for diverse groups on a weekly basis. He would fly to different countries to help businesses and organizations that had experienced problems with their administration, operations, or finances. Frank frequently dealt with egotistical and dominant high-ranking officials who rose by scheming, bribes, lies, manipulation, and pressure. Every day, he met recalcitrant supervisors and executives who exploited and bullied employees while gloating about their brutality. When Frank interfered in these circumstances to enact changes that affected people's jobs and well-being, he frequently encountered opposition, bullying, and even threats. He once got threats from a narcotic syndicate for his role in transferring a U.S. manufacturing enterprise from Mexico to Alabama. Nonetheless, Frank remained undeterred. And the relocation continued. Frank excelled in his profession and thrived when confronted with greedy, ambitious, ruthless, and perilous characters. It was essentially his forte. Thus, when Mark Laval, an imposing but inexperienced figure, and his friends attacked him, Frank quickly reversed the dynamics, intimidating them. They had never been so openly warned of the consequences of their behavior until Frank did, and they swiftly made way for him, with Laval and his associates no longer hindering him. Frank hurried after Brooke. When she caught up, she was approaching the establishment's rear exit. Brooke called out. She either didn't hear him or chose to ignore him. But she continued walking towards the exit. Frank accelerated his pace, closing the distance between them, and cried out once more. "Brooke, where are you going this time?" Brooke halted, turned to face her husband with an annoyed and inquisitive expression, doubting Frank's presence. Frank noticed her strangely distant conduct and was clearly annoyed that he had followed her. "I will inquire about the same matter. What are you doing here?" he questioned Brooke. Brooke thought for a few moments before responding to Frank. "I won't," but I stopped mid-sentence. Frank looked into her eyes and inquired once more. "Where are you going, Brooke?" Brooke shifted her gaze away from Frank, thinking to herself that this situation should not have occurred. He should not be present. Frank Brooke resumed speaking, but soon stopped. She needed to think carefully about what she was going to tell him. She realized that inventing a story was pointless. She felt obligated to confess the truth. She needed to notify him of her destination, although it would be painful and cause her great distress. Brooke happened to run into Mark Laval earlier that evening. After leaving the restroom, she passed Mark's table. He noticed her, rose from his seat, politely halted her progress, introduced himself, and began a brief chat. Brooke then returned to her table to join Frank and the others at their gathering as the celebration reached its peak. The musical band made their entry and began their first performance of the evening. Shortly after the band began to play, Mark Laval approached the guest table. Naturally, everyone was overjoyed that a local soccer player and sports icon had appeared. He was friendly, introduced himself, shook hands with everyone, took some selfies, signed autographs, and then encouraged Brooke to dance. Brooke was surprised and denied his offer. But Mark insisted respectfully. The other participants encouraged her and Frank made no objections. So she reluctantly accepted his offer. Needless to say, Brooke was concerned as Mark led her from their group to the dance floor. However, once there, Brooke discovered that dancing with Mark was beyond anything she had ever imagined. He was young, beautiful, bold, a talented athlete, and a great dancer. During their dance, Mark's touch connected with her in a way she appreciated. He held her in the way she preferred and conversed in a way she enjoyed. He expressed sentiments she appreciated hearing, art captivated her, and from that moment forward, she consistently accepted his invites to the dance floor. Her desire to him grew stronger as the night proceeded, becoming undeniably physical. Eventually, at the end of the night, he led them away from the dance floor to a private location where he embraced, kissed, caressed, and expressed his affections for her. He suggested they travel to his house for seclusion and relaxation so they can freely explore each other. He clearly described how they would spend the night together, increasing their physical connection, and promised an incredible experience that she would never forget. Brooke was intrigued. And as she sat with Frank and the other guests, she considered Mark's proposition. She was torn about leaving Frank at the party to accompany someone she barely knew to his home. However, the prospect of being with Mark excited her. She understood her feelings for him went against her commitment to Frank, despite the fact that she had previously found other men interesting. It never progressed beyond simple attraction. This night was distinct. She craved Mark's adoration and wished to surrender to the moment. Nonetheless, she wrestled with the guilt of betraying Frank's trust and the promises made to justify her action. Brooke sought a convincing rationale, one that she could accept morally and hoped Frank would understand. She chose to depart with Mark because he was more than simply a professional athlete and a local celebrity. He also exuded charm and a sense of honor that captivated her. Mark embodied the ideal of a love dream, and he presented Brooke with an appealing opportunity. She thought Frank would see it as a unique trip for her and would back her decision to pursue this relationship with Mark. Just this once, she expected him to be disappointed but understand because he wasn't just her hubby. He was her most trusted friend and collaborator, wishing for her to take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with Mark. Brooke sought solace in these thoughts, providing herself with justification that she could accept and hoped would persuade Frank. At her heart, she knew that her decision to accompany Mark was motivated by his bold claim that she was his for the evening, which triggered an intuitive need she couldn't deny. She was resolved not to miss out on such an exciting adventure, reminding herself that, in addition to being Frank's partner, she was a woman with her own needs and desires when making her decision. As the birthday dinner ended and the group returned to the venue for more celebrations, Mark approached their table and invited Brooke to dance again. Frank, evidently unhappy, rebuffed Mark's repeated requests for his wife's presence. Brooke expertly managed her husband's objections, consenting to one final dance with Mark while emphasizing her appreciation of the song. Mark thanked Frank for his patience before bringing Brooke to the dance floor. "There are some shadowy nooks there." Mark inquired whether Brooke was ready to leave. She confirmed with a giggle, revealing her complete surrender to him as the dance concluded. Mark escorted her back to their table to discuss their departure. He assured her of her safety and promised to resolve any worries Frank may have. Brooke positioned herself at the back exit, trusting his guarantee and preparing to leave with him. However, their plot was foiled when Frank unexpectedly turned up at the back door, revealing a hole in Mark's scheme. He interrupted her. "Leave to get an explanation." "Brooke, I am waiting." "Tell me where you are heading," Frank demanded. Brooke summoned all her bravery and responded, "Frank, I'm going with Mark." "Are you going with Mark?" Frank inquired, emotionless. "Yes, I am joining Mark. He welcomed me to his home," she stated. Frank stayed composed, wondering why she was going to his house and circumventing the door. Frank positioned himself between Brooke and the exit. "Frankly, this is too hard to describe at this time. I will call you later to explain what I am doing. But now I must leave. Mark is waiting," she explained. Frank maintained his cool manner, refusing to let her pass and discounting the possibility of a later explanation, insisting on understanding her intentions right then. "God, Frank, please, let's not make a fuss over this," Brooke implored. "Just let me go and I'll clarify everything later." "No, Brooke, I need you to explain what is occurring right now," Frank stated, raising his voice. When Frank insisted, Brooke became defensive, retorting, "Frank, you are not commanding me. Step aside and let me go." "No, Brooke, you are my wife and you will not leave until you have explained your acts," Frank retorted. Seeing Frank's tenacity, Brooke realized she needed to convey her intentions with a hesitant sigh. She said, "Frank, I know how awful this sounds and I honestly can't believe I'm doing it, but I'm going to Mark's to spend the night." She quickly added, "But Frank, this is only for tonight and he will bring me back tomorrow." Frank did not instantly respond to Brooke's statements. It took him a few moments to understand that his wife had just told him she was going to spend the night with Laval. However, he collected his thoughts and fiercely responded, "No, Brooke, you will not spend the night with Laval. You're not attending the overnight, are you? Are you planning to be intimate with him?" Frank interrupted. Brooke avoided his eyes, remaining silent. "Tell the truth, Brooke. Is this your plan?" Frank persisted, but Brooke remained mute, her gaze fixated on the ground. "Brooke, I know I'm correct," he said. Brooke eventually said, "Yes, Frank, you are correct. I intend to be intimate with Mark," she said. There was silence in the hall. Brooke finally looked up and spotted her husband's bewildered expression. "Frank, what are you thinking about?" Frank Walker was not someone who was readily astonished or shocked, but what his wife had just revealed to him severely worried him. Even after reading the message warning him that this could happen, he briefly lost his composure. "What am I thinking?" "I will tell you what I am thinking, Brooke. This amazes me completely. Simply absurd." "That's what I'm thinking," he said to her. Frank's unusual outburst caught Brooke off guard. She had never seen Frank so angry during their time together and it scared her. God, Frank, I apologize, I apologize. Brooke stated, I still can't. Meet his stare. Why, Brooke? Why are you doing this? Frank demanded. Frank, I realize this may seem mad to you, but please listen, she begged. I am listening, he replied. Frank, I believe every woman fantasizes about having a romantic experience with a celebrity or someone affluent and renowned. Frank cut her off sarcastically. Let me guess, Mark Level is your fairy tale prince or knight in shining armor. Please, Frank, do not mock this. This is every woman's fantasy. Mark is not just anyone. He is outstanding. He is a great gentleman, a star, and a celebrity. I want to live the dream that every woman hopes for. So please, Frank, allowing me to have this experience demonstrates how much you care for me. She pleaded with her spouse. Frank attempted to control his emotions in this unexpected scenario. So you'll go to Levels tonight and be intimate with him, and he'll take you home tomorrow. The couple will then continue their happy marriage, as if the encounter never occurred. Is this what you are saying, Brooke? Frank questioned. It is not an affair. It's only one night. Yes, tomorrow I'll return and my fantasy will have come true. I'll be happy and you will be delighted because you backed me in this, and we will move forward. She replied, hoping Frank would believe her. But after seeing his reaction, Brooke understood. Things weren't going as she had planned. So you're ignoring me to be personal with your charming prince whom you believe is vastly superior to me. He stated, damn, Brooke, it hurts. Are you indicating that I am not special? Is he not a real man? No. No, I did not say or imply that. She exclaimed in distress. So Brooke, what did you mean? He inquired. Frank, you are unique. You're a real dude. But Frank cut her off. But I'm not a professional athlete or a celebrity who claims to know how to sexually satisfy a woman. Is this it? Brooke looked down. There's more to it. She explained. So what's the issue? Are you bored with me? No, no, Frank, you are the finest. But Frank interrupted again. I'm the best. But you still need someone else? He stated. Yes, she admits. Her gaze remained averted. So tonight, you admit that the guy you want is Mark Laval, as she confessed while averting his gaze. So you've decided to spend the night with Mark Laval, engaging in a night of sensuality. It is not about love. I have no feelings of affection for him. But sure, I've decided to share an intimate moment with him and do something that many women dream of. She stated firmly and confidently. However, she promptly followed up. Frankly, I am not leaving our relationship. You are my spouse, and I will never leave what we have. But tonight, I will not be by your side. I will be with Mark. I hope. No, I encourage you to try to understand my needs and requirements. Thank you, Frank. I beseech you. Let's not make this a dramatic ordeal, she pleaded. Frank breathed deeply. Why, Brooke? Why do you think I should be all right with you sleeping with another guy and then returning to me as if nothing happened? He asked. It's because you've always approached me with an open heart and treated my emotions, desires, and needs with care and attention. And I trust that once you see how important this night with Mark is to me, you'll manage your frustration and approach it as a calm, seasoned, sophisticated individual. She told her husband, can I deal with this? Can I really cope? Please explain to me how. I am meant to deal with the idea that you will be in Mark's bed tonight, and he will take you How will I react tomorrow when he drives up with you, and I find that you two spent the entire night together? How can I look at you after you've shared yourself with someone else? Explain to me how I should handle all of this. He inquired. Frank, I do not have an answer for you. I just hope you can work this out in your head so we can move on with our lives. I understand you're furious with me, but can't you see how important this experience is for me? She questioned. Brooke, you're implying that you want I'd swallow my pride and tolerate your relationship with Laval. Frank noted. This is not a fling, she cried. And no, Frank. I do not expect you to just accept it. I'm asking you to realize and reconcile with my feelings and scarcity since you love me and are my closest partner, kindred soul. You want me to have this one of a kind experience, and experience I may never have again. Frank, this is my plea to you. Sweetie, she said him. Frank, Moldovan Rock's appeal. For a moment, he couldn't comprehend how she expected him to tolerate her intimacy with Laval. The longer he thought about it, the more it became evident that she didn't realize how serious her acts were and how they affected him and their relationship. She appeared to be immersed in a fantasy brought on by her connection with Laval. That evening he felt compelled to bring her back to reality. Brooke, what do you call a guy whose wife has a relationship with another man? He probed. Brooke thought about it for a while. Older people are having difficulty understanding the word. Exactly, Brooke. They call him a cuckold, which is a man whose wife has an affair with another man for sexual satisfaction. But I will not be made a cuckold by you and Mark Laval, he asserted firmly. As Brooke looked at Frank, tears welled up in her eyes. So you won't stop me? She asked. No, Brooke, I will not intervene. You've grown up and are capable of making your own decisions. It is entirely up to you to decide whether or not to proceed. If you believe this is what you require, please proceed. Stay the night with him. Indulge in what you term love and intimacy. Frank intervened. I will not block your path. I have previously clarified. This is not about love. I do not love him. I love you, Frank. It is simply a physical law. Brooke maintained that she was drawn to Mark physically rather than emotionally. So you're distinguishing between love and physicality in your mind? Frank deduced. Yes. Frank admits to spending time with Mark because of their physical attraction. But I will return to you because of our love. You are my spouse, my closest ally, and my soul mate. She informed him that what we share is more than just a physical connection. I will not dispute with you about the difference between love and physical attraction, but as I already indicated, I will not hinder your path. Frank repeated. Brooke glanced at Frank wondering if he truly understood her. If this is truly your wish, go for it. But Frank halted before you left. We are ending our marriage right now. Brooke went into a panic. What about our marriage? What do you mean? I'm implying that once you leave our matrimonial link will dissolve and will disconnect our rings and call our union off. The formal procedures will be addressed later. However, in my opinion, our marriage ends prior to your departure. Frank explained before Brooke had an opportunity to respond. Frank went on, and this evening when Lavanya escorts you, I'll stand cuckolded because you're no longer my spouse. No, no, Frank, I cannot do this. I just cannot. Brooke yelled. We've agreed on this, Brooke. So what's your verdict? He pressed. I'm unsure, she said tightly. Ridiculous. You are completely aware of your desires. You intend to spend the evening with Mark Lovelier and then return to me," Frank claimed. Brooke wept bitterly. "Are you serious? Will our marriage end if I spend only one night with Mark?" she asked, her voice quivering. "Absolutely," he confirmed with all earnestness. Brooke's tone quickly changed from terror to rage as she realized her explanation for spending the night with Mark had crumbled right in front of her. "Frank, do my sentiments and feelings have such little value to you that you would end our marriage over this without giving us the opportunity to resolve and move forward together?" she questioned Brooke. "There's nothing to fix here. The realization that certain aspects of life, such as my spouse's infidelity with another man, cannot be changed. I will not agree to an arrangement in which you are intimate with Laval, and then we go about our lives as if it were inconsequential," he stated. "So my sentiments, emotions and societies are meaningless to you," she said sarcastically. "Brooke, you vanished just moments ago, effectively rejecting me without explanation. If I hadn't chased and stopped you, you'd be on your way to Mark Cavalier's home for a romantic night. As a result, it is clear that my sentiments and emotions are irrelevant to you. Why should I care about your feelings and emotions?" He questioned the significance of her decision, which hit Brooke. "My gosh, Frank, I'm deeply sorry." She stated that it had never crossed her mind. "Damn it, Brooke. Don't say you didn't consider it, you did," Frank started. "All I could think about was you preparing for libel and the sensuous activities he had planned for you. You clearly did not consider my point of view, the reasons you departed your destination, or the activities he described. God, Frank, please believe me. I did not intend to leave without telling you of my whereabouts. When I arrived at Mark's, I meant to message you about my whereabouts and actions," she explained. "Message me? Really?" Frank laughed. "So you were in bed with Guardia with the aim of messaging me, right?" "Frank, I hate leaving the party, but I chose to go see Mark Laval. As for some private moments, I will not be returning home tonight. Good night and see you tomorrow." "Is this it, Frank?" Ridiculed. "This is callous," Brooke observed. "Brooke, you're a touch cold. It's callous and shocking that you took the snap decision to quit me, your husband, your closest companion, and your soulmate to spend the night with a man you met recently," Frank delivered. Brooke sobbed. "What is truly callous is your expectation that I will tolerate it as if it were inconsequential. That's callous," she complained. "I'm so sorry, Frank. Sorry, I just didn't believe," she stated. "Brooke, it makes no difference whether you pondered or not, and if you communicated or not. Because I stopped you before you could leave, and now I understand your motives while you understand mine. We no longer have to speculate. Now we must face reality." Frank spoke with resolve. Brooke looked at Frank with a puzzled glance. "And what is the crux that she acquired?" "The essence is this. There is an exit and something much more beautiful awaits you outside. I assume he's becoming impatient. The choice is yours," Frank informed his 12-year-old wife firmly and definitely. Brooke announced without hesitation. "Frank, I will not walk through that door. I refuse to leave you for him. I will not sacrifice our common life for his gain. I am not that naive," Brooke explained to him. Frank had been watching her closely for about a quarter of an hour. "You appeared ready to leave through that door and accompany him. So what is the difference now? Is everything essentially the same? Aside from the fact that you are afraid to get a divorce," Frank inquired, "I mean, is it possible to think that your urgent desire to be intimate with Laval has simply vanished? Or are you going to wait until next week when I'll Be in Europe to see him? He questioned. No, why would you assume this? Brooke exclaimed, raising her voice. Are you going to be disloyal to me when I'm not around? He pressed. No, no, never have I been unfaithful to you. I would never betray you. I adore you, she said loudly. But earlier tonight, you were on the point of infidelity. If I hadn't intervened, you'd be betraying me right now. For the second time, Frank recounted. The revelation hit Brooke hard and she was forced to confront the reality of her conduct towards Mark. Oh my goodness, no, no, what was going on in my mind? She yelled. So what happened? He inquired. I am not certain, Frank. I'm utterly confused. I can't believe I thought it was acceptable to go with Mark, that it wouldn't be inappropriate or bother you. She admitted. Frank listened. His uncertain expression did not escape her. She realized she had to be completely truthful with him. Frankly, I'm not sure what went into me. It all started when Mark approached our table and asked me to dance, then led me to the dance floor. He was so confident and pushy, continually expressing his desire for me and how lovely it would be to be with. Then he hugged me tight, kissed me, and began the rest. Me and Frank, I did not resist. I did not push him away. She admitted, tears streaming down her face. So you motivated him, as Frank pointed out. Yes. I motivated him. I'm very sorry, Frank. She wept. Then I convinced myself that leaving with him was the right decision and that you would understand and not mind if I left with him. All I can say is that I know I made a tremendous mistake and I'm deeply sorry. She wept. Frank Hurd erupted, pondering the note the waitress had handed him. He dug into his pocket and brought it here. Read this. He suggested Brooke read the notebook and then looked at Frank. Where has this come from? She inquired. The server gave it to me throughout our supper. He responded. Is this just a tough employee? Brooke pondered. That's what is written here. Brooke was astounded after reading the note. I can't fathom it. She said. He picked you out of the crowd and tempted you. He deceived you, Frank said. Brooke read the note several times, wondering whether what he had done to me was simply for fun. Yes, Frank confirmed that everything he told you was for fun. Brooke felt devastated. She recognized she was only the target of this week's strategy. A reward to satisfy the heroic need for married women. Last week it could have been Debbie. The following could be Sandy, but this week it is me. Brooke admitted her error and the upsetting understanding that she had jeopardized her marriage to Frank. I feel nauseous, she said, turning and hurrying to the restroom. After throwing up several times, she cleaned her hands and face. Exited the lavatory, seeing her reflection in the mirror, appearing absolutely exhausted and matching the insanity of the evening. Brooke noticed Frank waiting near the exit. She instantly approached and embraced him. Frankly, I'm deeply sorry. Please pardon my ignorance and naivety. She pleaded, sobbing. Frank looked at her and then said. Brooke, Level caught you off guard. Then he seduced you to the point that you believed that engaging in intimacy with him would have no consequences and that I would be unconcerned if you had a brief contact with him. But now you've learned the opposite. You now understand. So, guarantee us we'll never find ourselves in this situation again. As Frank approached the exit, he spotted 2 floors. The comrades were still present. 39. They observed him and Brooke. Brooke, stay here. I need to Speak with Level's acquaintances, Frank stated. Please let it be. We don't need any more issues. Brooke told Frank, No, Brooke, I cannot abandon us in this manner. Frank exited with those comments, leaving Brooke alone to approach Level's companions. Gentlemen, we seek no trouble. One of his comrades stated, Okay then, follow my instructions. Tell your friend Level that he was defeated today. That he is a failure. Inform him that Frank Walker's broadcast will go global. That Mark Level is a failure. Frank commanded. Both of Level's comrades looked at Frank perplexed. Sir, we are unable to express this to him. He'd annihilate both of us, one said. Do you prefer confronting me or him? Frank inquired. Sir, we do not intend to argue with you, one responded. A wise decision. Now, one of you will use the phone to deliver my message. Do it now, and mention that he should not be anyplace after my leave. Frank told one of the men to pick up the phone, dial Level's number, and convey Frank's message. 3119. Frank didn't hear the conversation, but he could tell. Level was furious since his friend had warned him not to take any reckless moves. The talk then ceased. How did he respond? Frank inquired. He said he'd end you, one of the men said. Okay, Frank acknowledged. Frank, I promise you that after everything, I will never let another man approach me, she asserted. Frank looked at her carefully before responding. Okay, and when we socialize, as we did tonight, I'll make every effort to help you keep that promise. I should have intervened before Level entangled you, but I failed. Thus, the responsibility lies with both of us, as well as Level, who should not have followed and enthralled a married woman. So, Brooke, I absolve you and myself, but not Level, and I will confront him later. Frank, I appreciate your empathy, but please disregard. Mark will never cross paths with him again. And he isn't worth the possible trouble, she said after her comment. Frank wondered why she didn't want Mark to face any repercussions. After all, Level nearly ended Brooke's marriage. Why wouldn't she want him to feel bad for trapping her in his scheme? I will think about it, he reassured her. Frank then inquired. Do you want to return to the festivities? No, Frank. Let's go home, Brooke exclaimed. Absolutely. Yes, let's just go home, Brooke added. Frank and Brooke proceeded back through the corridor, re-entered the restaurant. And with that, Frank, his two companions picked up Brooke, and they departed the establishment. And the bar on the street. Frank handed the parking stub to the valet. And then they along with several other duos awaited their automobile. During their wait, an SUV accelerated towards them, halting abruptly in front of them. The passenger window descended. Mark Level was irate inside the SUV. Come on, Brooke, you mentioned your desire to accompany me, so come on, enter the vehicle. Mark yelled. She will not accompany you. The vocal, Frank retorted, are not conversing with you, elderly man. Mark yelled back at Frank. Come on, Brooke, let's depart now. Mark persisted. No, Mark, I can't accompany you this evening. Brooke replied to him. Brooke, come here and enter the car. Let's depart now. Mark yelled. She won't accompany you. You were defeated in the game. You're a loser now. Leave this place. Loser, and let us be frank, informed Mark, being labeled a loser in the presence of a crowd who were probably his supporters immediately angered Mark. I'll prove who the real loser is, Mark yelled, exiting his UV, Frank advised the crowd, awaiting their vehicles to distance themselves as the situation might escalate. He then proceeded to the SUV driver's side front, where he encountered Level wielding a sizable semi-automatic pistol, consumed by fury from losing Brooke and facing public disgrace. Laval air was uncontrollable. Frank analyzed Laval, and his actions brought back memories of a spectacle in the Masai Mara, Kenya, where he observed a battle between a lion and hyenas over the lion's catch. Similarly, Laval had pursued Brooke for hours and then claimed her, intending to take her home for his gratification. However, before he could enact his plan, Frank intervened and rescued her. Now, like that lion, the Valere was fixated on reclaiming her, indifferent to the measures required to accomplish his goal, even if it meant eliminating Frank. Brooke will join me. And if you attempt to halt it, I will eliminate you, Laval declared. Frank retreated slightly, now standing roughly 3 meters from Mark, with his hands uplifted. Palms forward, fingers stretched in a defensive yet non-threatening stance. Lower the firearm, Frank requested. You've disrupted my pursuit, and I'll end you. Put down the weapon before it escalates. Frank suggested in a composed, assertive tone. I'll display who's in trouble. I'll lend you and then pursue your spouse. Mark threatened, aiming the pistol at Frank. So absorbed in his tirade and anger, Lavinia failed to notice Frank's subtle movement of his right hand into his trouser pocket, where he carried SIG Sauer, micro-compact semi-automatic pistol. Loaded with 8 rounds of Hornet critical defense ammunition, 1 in the chamber and 7 in the magazine. Frank, with a license for the SIG pistol, was well practiced in its defensive use. Having not engaged in actual combat for years, but with military experience involving direct engagements, Frank was prepared for this perilous confrontation with an armed and hostile Mark Laval. The resurgence of those memories instilled in him the necessary reaction for this life-threatening predicament. Therefore, with his hand in his pocket, Frank resolved to conclude this encounter by deciding to fire at Laval, to the immediate danger posed by Laval as armed threat. And proximity justified Frank's lethal response. Having decided, Frank calmed Laval's outburst and agitation. He quietened, regulated his breathing and concentrated on his action plan. Effortlessly, he drew the pistol, positioned it to shoot, aimed at Laval, and rapidly discharged 2 precise rounds. But the pistol's manipulation needed to be accurate, and the action completed within seconds to prevent Laval as potential return fire. A scenario Frank wished to avoid. As Frank focused on the failure, and drew his weapons smoothly. Suddenly, 3 fast shots were heard from behind him to his right. At the same moment, Frank noticed Laval's frame shudder as the bullet struck him, and then he observed Laval toppled to the ground, having recoiled from the unexpected gunfire. Frank wondered aloud what the hell, and turning noticed the assailant still pointing the handgun at Mark's prone figure. Frank swiftly regained his composure and confronted the assailant. I believe you've done it. You can lower your weapon, Frank stated. He was going to eliminate you. The assailant replied, lowering the firearm. Yes, that's what he mentioned. Frank responded. Then inquired, who are you? I'm an off-duty officer and I'm in charge of security here. The assailant explained as they hastened towards Laval. Excellent. I'm relieved you're here, Frank expressed. Yes, I'm thankful I am here too, she responded. Frank and the security guard crouched beside Laval, who was alive and alert but moaning in agony from 3 bullet injuries. What occurred? Mark groaned. You were fired upon. Remain calm, Frank instructed. Was I shot? Mark inquired. Indeed, you were shot, Frank confirmed. Who fired at me? Mark questioned. I fired at you, Mark, the officer confessed. Mark stared at the officer. Marjorie, he uttered. Yes, Mark, she replied. My gosh, Marjorie, why did you fire at me? Valley. A question breathless. Because you were about to murder this gentleman. Marjorie explained. Mark was panting heavily and bleeding profusely. God, it hurts so much. Please aid me. I've summoned the ambulance. They're en route. Stay put and hang on. Marjorie instructed Laval. I was gasping for breath. I didn't tend to murder him. It was merely a jest. Mark stated. Struggling for breath, pointing a firearm and menacing someone is no jest. Marjorie retorted. Marjorie, you're aware it was a jest. He said in a faint voice. Mark, how often must I tell you that your jest might result in your demise? She replied. I understand, but it was only a jest. I was merely jesting. He wheezed. God, I'm so chilly. Why am I so cold? Then he looked at Frank and pleaded. Please, sir, I'm extremely parched. Could you fetch me some water? Frank turned and called to the bystanders to procure water for Laval. Laval was losing blood rapidly. And Frank realized that even if the paramedics arrived immediately, nothing could be done to save him. Because he had bled out excessively for a brief period. Laval continued to plead for assistance. But then grew silent, weakened from blood loss. After a few more moments, his breathing ceased. Frank checked for a heartbeat, checked again, but found none. He had departed. Mark Laval had passed away. It was past 11:30 p.m. when the authorities permitted Frank and Brooke to exit the restaurant and bar. They, along with other eyewitnesses of the altercation and shooting, were interviewed by law enforcement detectives, special agents, internal affairs, and even an assistant prosecutor. Frank and Brooke recounted their interactions and involvement in Mark Laval's affairs. And Frank issued a separate endorsement of the off-duty officer's action to shoot Laval, publicly stating she preserved his life. But after a night that began with attending a birthday celebration and concluded with their entanglement in the homicide of a local sports celebrity, Frank and Brooke were heading home. They traveled in silence for a stretch, neither uttering a single word until Brooke disrupted the quiet. Frank, she began. Yes, he replied, are you regretful that you didn't end him? She wrote. Without hesitating, yes, Frank admitted. Brooke pondered his instantaneous and unequivocal response. And detected the resentment in his tone. Frank was deprived of contentment and was irate that the scenario with Laval had concluded with a female security officer committing the act. When Mark confronted them outside the restaurant, Brooke was certain this now constituted Frank Walker's challenge, and she anticipated that it wouldn't bode well for Mark Laval too. Mark was a youthful luminary with an enormous ego of volatile temperament and a weapon. In contrast to Frank Walker, an experienced corporate tactician accustomed to undermining influential figures, infuriated that this adult indulging in childish antics dared to attempt to usurp his wife directly before him, and Laval could not evade the repercussions. Brooke was fully aware that Frank was carrying a weapon and understood he had intentionally enticed Mark into a scenario where he would likely end his life, informing Mark that he had been defeated in their game and labeling him a failure served purely as a lure, and inevitably Mark took the bait, which doomed him. Thus, Brooke was certain Mark Laval was doomed before he even exited his SUV. Observing the clash between the man she might have loved and her spouse, she was deeply troubled. Because she believed herself to be the cause of Mark's demise. Had he not chosen her and had she not consented to accompany him, he would be alive. Yet by some odd twist of fate, an off-duty police officer fatally shot Laval, mistakenly believing he was protecting Frank's life. This action inadvertently prevented Frank from having Laval confront the consequences of attempting to elope with his wife. Yet it also spared Brooke the anguish of knowing her husband was the killer. Well, I'm relieved you didn't kill him. She confessed to him. Why? Frank inquired. Because it's preferable that the officer did, she explained. Do you mean by the police? Frank pressed. Yes, and by the news outlet, she added. If I had done it, both the police and the press would have sought to sensationalize it. However, it would have been a straightforward case of self-defense. He acted aggressively, brandished a firearm, and threatened my life multiple times, standing merely 3 meters away. Hence, it would have been a defensible act of self-protection to use lethal force regardless of the police and press opinions, he articulated. Yes, but the press would probe and scrutinize why you chose to kill rather than injure him, she responded. Indeed, it's their role to inquire, speculate, and offer critiques. Yet the reality remains that he was equipped with a lethal weapon posing a fatal threat even if injured. For my safety, self-defense would leave me no alternative but to aim a decisive strike. Encountered associated, pondering his words. It will still be distressing in the media, even if I hadn't been the one to kill him. Some fault will be assigned to me. Frank shared, and they'll blame me, she acknowledged. Correct, they will. So brace yourself for the scrutiny we'll face. Our attorney will provide assistance to a degree, but only so much. Rest assured, the media will spin the narrative to suggest his death was directly tied to you and me. We might face legal actions and disputes, but don't fret. We are equipped to manage them and will prevail. After all, he lured you, assaulted us, and threatened me, making us the victims. Frank elucidated. He then reminded her, but bear in mind he was a celebrated football player and a local hero here in our cherished South. Such figures are revered so in the eyes of the media. He can do no wrong. Understand that for a while, all we'll encounter in the press is the tragic tale of poor Mark Lavagna portrayed as a victim of a jealous spouse leading to his death by a security officer. However, eventually, the true narrative of Mark Laval will emerge and the media's frenzy will subside, losing interest in the saga of a sports icon known for seducing married women for nocturnal escapades. That's my wish, for all of this to simply vanish, she declared. In time it will, Frank assured her. They continued their drive in silence for a few moments until Frank broached a provocative question about her potential regrets over missing a night of passionate intimacy with him. Brock, taken aback and offended by Frank's inquiry, shot him a glance, incredulous at his audacity. After a brief pause contemplating how to respond, she expressed firmly, "No dear, absolutely not." This was the deception Frank expected to hear. A simple no would have sufficed and seemed genuine. However, the extended silence and the look in her eyes combined with "Of course not," were overly solemn and confirmed his suspicions. He realized she was reflecting on the loss of her fantastical experience and aimed to shield her disappointment from him. However, her gaze, tone, and word choice betrayed her. Yet Frank was not taken aback. For he understood that the interaction had rekindled and shattered the notion that she was merely a spouse. That she was a person with the freedom to seek pleasure with someone other than her husband. While they danced during their dance, Laval engaged rocking discussions about desires that are often left unspoken, even between spouses. Brock listened, and his words ignited her curiosity. Laval persuaded her that the ideal way to explore these taboo desires was with a companion with whom she could be completely open, candid, and unrestrained, a partner devoid of emotional bonds. Someone experienced in descendance, guiding her and discovering the sensual aspects of her nature. Thus the groundwork for betrayal was laid, and Frank was aware of it. He recognized she was now receptive to intimacy with other men, despite her earlier vow to refrain from such encounters. This was merely a tactic to escape her current predicament. When Frank prevented her from departing with Laval, he noticed the change in her tone and saw it in her behavior. Her actions expressed a willingness to seek closeness with another, though she was not ready to act on these impulses just yet. But that was only for the time being. Aware of all these details, Frank acknowledged he could never trust her again. As they drove home, he pondered whether he could tolerate his distrust towards her and accept the likelihood that she might someday seize the chance to be with another man. Brooke would probably embrace this chance. Thank you for spending the time to hear today's story. If you enjoyed this essay, please like it and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you have a story to share about your or another person's situation, please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.